Roger, great to be here today. It's always good coming back to the West and having a bit of a detox. I was a bit worried with the fires that the air would look a little bit like Shanghai, but it's been beautiful here, so it's great. Just want to kick off. Who here has been to China? That's good, most of the room. Who here has been, while they were there, visited IKEA? Okay, those with your hands up probably know what I'm about to say, but next time you're in China, I'd highly recommend visiting IKEA store, ideally on the weekend. Whenever we have visitors over, we always take them to IKEA because it's a really good glimpse into the way Chinese consumers act. So you've got a lot of window shoppers going there, taking photos with their smartphones of the latest furniture. Not a lot of them are buying, but they're taking photos. But you do have your cashed up young couples meticulously studying the products, the product labeling and things like that. Then you've got the young loved up couples on a date sitting on the sofa watching their iPad movies. You've got families, granddad, grandma, mum, dad, the kids sitting around one of the sample dining tables. And they've got the flask of tea, they're eating the pork buns, they're on like a little family dinner event. You've got people having a nap tucked in under the duvet deep in the land of Nod. And not that it's representative of most Chinese consumers these days, but occasionally you'll see the little boy peeing. A little bit of dribble ending up on the mattress. I guess the kind of key learnings from a trip to IKEA is, one, never buy ex-demo furniture in China. And two, Chinese consumers are quite unique. Now few places where Chinese consumers' uniqueness really shines through is in the e-commerce and m-commerce space, which is obviously what I'm going to talk about today. So my first 6 points will be why Chinese consumers are different, and then more of interest to you guys, the next 8 points will be talking about what that means for marketers. So obviously everyone talks about the scale and growth of China, those 1.3 million. If you could get $1 from every Chinese person, you'd be a very wealthy person. And obviously e-commerce is no exception. So you've got about 12 times Australia's population are shopping as of the end of the first half of this year, so 271 million consumers. So minus one in Tasmania, that's a lot of people. But in saying that, that's less than half of China's 591 million online consumers. So as a penetration rate, it's lower than countries like Australia, and less than a fifth of that 1.3 billion people. But it is that 271 million consumers that are most likely to buy Western products, pay a premium for quality Australian/New Zealand goods. And then obviously the rate of growth is huge. The last 4 years has seen about 70% growth in e-commerce. By 2015, it's estimated that almost $500 billion Australian dollars will be of goods and services will be sold online. Huge. Now, in Australia, another key difference, most people in Australia, or a lot of people in Australia, will shop at the likes of online Woolies, or they'll go to Coles, they'll go to Dick Smith to buy their goods. China's a little bit different. Chinese consumers are much more trusting of your third-party platforms, such as your Taobao, your Tmall. Reason being is, one, they trust those platforms. There's a lot of retailers out there, a lot of them are cowboys, and they know that they're going to get a good deal at their familiar platforms. They're also can pay the way they want to pay. They know the logistics are going to be very similar to, well, they're going to receive their goods. So these guys are all set up for payment, for logistics. About just under 2/3 of consumers in Australia, when they shop online, shop on consumer-to-consumer platforms, such as, you've probably heard of Taobao. Taobao makes up about 96% of consumer-to-consumer platforms. Most of Taobao is all about price competition. So you have got people just constantly trying to lower their price, and people are searching based on price. So probably not so relevant for you guys today. If you're trying to position yourself as a premium good, you're probably more concerned with your business-to-consumer platforms such as Tmall, which make up about 36% of the market in China, but it's growing a lot faster. It's growing at about 77.5% versus your Taobao type things, which are growing at about 31%. So it's where the future is, and it's less price focused. So it's what we're going to focus on today. So that B2C platform is dominated by Tmall, who's also owned by Alibaba, who also own Taobao. So they make up the vast majority of online shopping in China. There's Jingdong.com, who are obviously big, and most other players are quite irrelevant in China and becoming increasingly so. There's niches like high-end fashion, food and things where they're going through some of the niche players, but overall, if you want to be reaching those 271 million online shoppers, Tmall's where it's at. Now, purchase motivations are another big difference. Chinese shoppers, as I was saying, are quite different, and the way they shop online is different as well, especially on your Tmall, your business-to-consumer type platforms. Price is important, convenience is important, like in Australia, but they have a few other factors coming into the mix. Counterfeit goods. Obviously, everyone, when you're talking about China, it's the land of fakes. More than 2/3 of the world's fake goods come from China. Everything from fake handbags, fake DVDs, rat that's been sold as fake lamb and beef. There's fakes everywhere. My personal favourite is, and a lot of you have probably heard this story, is in a small local zoo in the province of Hunan. The local kids were all told that the zoo finally had a lion, and everyone was very happy, and they all trotted down to the zoo. And then on day one, the lion started barking. It was actually a Tibetan Mastiff. So right from day one, or right from a young age, poor Chinese consumers are pretty much living in this land where a lot of things are expected to be fakes. And the beauty of things like Tmall is they do not allow anyone to just list on there. You need the registered trademark or authorization from the registered Chinese trademark to list on Tmall. You also, when you set up a store, you have to put quite a lot of money into a trust, and then if you try and sell fake goods, the money will be refunded to consumers. And also, there's a lot of reviews on something like Tmall, and if you try to sell a fake, people will slam you. And Chinese are big into reviews, so people are increasingly trusting, or Chinese consumers are increasingly trusting the likes of Tmall just because they know they can buy the real McCoy there. Another one is, we do a lot of research into Chinese consumers, and something that's been really fascinating is the rise of the smaller cities in China. Urbanisation, when China opened up in 1979, was less than 20%, and now it's gone up to 52.5%. For the last 30-something years, every year there's been pretty much the population of Adelaide has migrated from the countryside into the city. And it's created some massive cities, like obviously 110 cities bigger than Sydney in China, and I'm sure most people in this room have never heard of most of them. But whilst cities such as Shanghai and Guangzhou and Beijing are spoilt for retail choices, you can pretty much buy anything in the world there. Most of these cities, which have massive populations, can't just trot down to the local shopping mall and buy the goods they want. So they're actually going on and buying things from e-commerce stores. So you've got Tier 1 and Tier 2 consumers spend on average about 4,700 RMB a year on online commerce, which is about 767 Aussie, whereas Tier 1, the smaller cities spend 6,000 RMB, so almost a quarter more. and they're buying faster. Their growth rate is much faster. So a good way to reach these consumers. And I'm sure you'll be hearing a lot about this during the course of the day, and it warrants its own presentation. But I just think any talk about e-commerce really needs to include how important the integration between websites and social media is. So you've got quite not that long ago, if Chinese consumers wanted information, they'd be going to the state-controlled newspapers, TVs, radio, and that was the only information they could get. And then recently, things have opened up through this thing called the internet, and consumers can now get information from other sources that don't involve the government. And a lot of these consumers are much more trusting of these other sources. For example, a company, which I'm sure you'll hear from SEO China, but a company website, consumers will go there and increase their brand awareness. 38% of them, 49% increase their purchase intent from a corporate website. So that's where they're going for information, versus less than 32% for your state-run TV, radio, and newspapers. The big one is social media. Up until recently, Chinese consumers didn't really have a voice, and now through social media they can finally sit on their soapbox and be heard, and they're taking advantage of it. Social media in the last 6 months, 9 out of 10 of online Chinese consumers are getting onto social media, and they're very active, they're very creative, they're saying what they think, versus in Australia it's about 6 out of 10. So it's huge, and 85% of people who are buying goods online will then go and talk about it on social media. Consumers trust brands that are out on social media, because if you're on social media, you're there, people can abuse you, people can praise you, but it's transparent. So because of that, consumers will trust a brand 95% more 95% of consumers will trust a brand more if they have seen it on social media. 45% of consumers follow their favourite brands online on social media. And we're starting to see a lot of integration. The recent purchase of 18% of Weibo by Alibaba, who own the Taobao and Tmall, they obviously paid 500 and something million for Weibo, because they know there's so much integration and so much data to be shared, and it's kind of where we're seeing the future going with e-commerce. And Roger introduced the Xiaomi mobile phone at the start. They're obviously giving one away. I hope it's not one of these. This is a Hongmi phone, and it's 799 RMB, so it works out to about $140. Cheap phone. But with that, you're getting a quad processor, you're getting an 8 megapixel camera, a gigabyte of RAM, 4 gigs of memory. You're getting a lot of phone for $140. And that's made mobiles accessible to Chinese consumers. It's huge. 464 million consumers are connected to the internet by their mobile. 80% of consumers that go online are going online on mobiles, and it's growing at silly rates. Next year there's an estimated 450 million mobile phones or smartphones are expected to be sold in China, so it's just going to get bigger. 18% of online shoppers have used their mobile, and we're going to see increasingly more of that. Services like WeChat are now embedding on mobile commerce. You can scan barcodes and you can buy things with a few clicks. It's just going to get bigger, as we've seen with the growth rate, 181% first quarter of this year. And then another thing is Chinese consumers. You go into any store in China, you'll see people out there scanning barcodes, doing searches on mobiles. You'll see them getting out there and doing price comparisons. And Chinese consumers are very shrewd, and they'll look around. 45% visit a store and then shop online. The equivalent in America, Australia, is about 8-9%. So it's huge, and something to consider if you do have a cross-channel marketing platform between physical and online. It's good to have as much integration as you can.